Okay, so a couple things that I want to talk about before we get to the questions. I think it's really important in the lead up to the debate between President Trump and Biden tonight. I think it's really important to address a narrative that's been kind of pervasive among Christians, actually. Christians, especially on Twitter, especially on Instagram, all over social media. And this narrative is the idea that you can be pro-life, but also vote for a candidate who supports abortion up until the moment of birth. Joe Biden does, Kamala Harris does. And there's been this narrative among quote-unquote woke Christians that it's okay to vote for a candidate who is pro-abortion, you are still pro-life because, and this is the term they're using, because you are holistically pro-life. Okay, so this is a new term that they're using, and it is, by the way, it's just a sneaky rhetorical trick to try to get evangelicals to vote Democrat. But the Democrats are trying to tell you that if you are open borders on immigration, if you support a huge welfare state, if you support birth control and taking care of the environment, then you are holistically pro-life and abortion becomes less of an issue. And so I really want to talk tonight about why this is so false. There's one part, as is true with many false narratives, there's one part of this narrative that is true. To be pro-life does not just mean to be anti-abortion. That is true. That is very, very true. To be pro-life means to recognize the dignity of all human life from the moment of conception until natural death in all circumstances, whether it's abortion, whether it's treating other people with respect when it comes to sexual ethics, when it comes to euthanasia, when it comes to personal charity, when it comes to fostering and adopting and treating each other the way that we ought to be treated. That's true. All of that is pro-life. But I want to be very, very clear tonight for any Christian who may be wondering about this alternative narrative we're hearing from the left. You cannot be pro-life without being anti-abortion. That is the fundamental of pro-life. Life begins at conception, and if we do not protect those unborn babies, then you are not pro-life. It's not a matter of being personally pro-life, but politically wanting other people to have the choice to do that. Being pro-life means that you are against abortion and you champion and stand up for those least among us. So don't fall for that narrative. Like I said, it's a sneaky rhetorical tactic used by the left to try to trick evangelicals into voting for them. It's absolute nonsense. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the most pro-abortion tickets that we have seen in modern America, period. The most pro-abortion. Their abortion policies are absolutely abysmal. So that's the first thing that I want to say. Okay, so the next thing that I want to say is I want you to start submitting your questions now so that we can collect them as we go so that I can get to as many as possible. And I want to bring someone else into this conversation in the meantime. We'll get to your questions in just a second, but I want to bring someone else into this conversation to talk just a little bit about what this abortion divide in America means. And I know this is such an uncomfortable topic. Nobody likes to talk about abortion. Whether you're pro-life, whether you're pro-abortion, no one likes to talk about it. That's why it's covered in euphemisms, but we need to because this is what's on the line. So as long as I am tech savvy enough to bring her in, let's see if I am. I might have to actually pick this up. I want to bring in a very special guest today. Bear with me for 1 second. I know that I'm acting like a boomer, but okay. 1 second. Oh, Lord. Okay. So hopefully, yay, that worked! This, ladies and gentlemen, if you did not know, this is Danielle D'Souza Gill. Danielle, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, I am so excited to be here. I feel like I'm just chatting with my friend on Instagram about a very important topic. So that is a perfect evening for me.
Definitely. And I'm delighted that I got the technology to work. So win-win.
Okay,
so I do want to talk about this narrative. You're the perfect person to talk about this with because you have a new book out. Congratulations on your new book, by the way. Really exciting. It's called The Choice, The Abortion Divide in America. Why did you write this book?
I wrote this book because I felt like pro-lifers and just all people need to be equipped with how to respond to the most popular pro-choice arguments. How can we really debunk them one by one? So each chapter is titled after a different pro-choice myth that I then respond to. And I think also so often we don't actually have a debate with the other side on this issue in person. So I think it's really important to be able to say, okay, here's the pro-choice side, and then here's the pro-life side, and then kind of make up your mind on what you believe on that, because so often the left doesn't put out the facts, they don't put out the information on this, so a lot of people actually just don't know about it. And so I wanted to make sure it was kind of put out in an organized way in my book.
And that's exactly the word that I would use to describe your book. By the way, it's organized. If you want to look up a specific talking point from the left, you know exactly which chapter to go to, because each one of your chapters is titled myth. And then you list the myths. You can go and you can look up the narrative that the other side uses. You can look up how to respond to it. It's great. So kudos on that. Two of the points I really want to focus on tonight as it relates to what I was talking about in the introduction, this false narrative that that you can be pro-life and vote for Joe Biden because there are other things that are more important than abortion when it comes to life. And the first thing is, like I said, very uncomfortable thing to say, but we really need to understand what we're talking about. And that's the question. That's the question of what is abortion? Because the left claims that it's a normal medical procedure. They call it healthcare. They say it's safe for women. They obviously don't mention whether it's safe for the baby. What say you in response to that?
Yeah, I actually think talking about the different kinds of abortion procedures is one of the most important things, because when we say abortion, oftentimes people don't actually know what that is. It sounds like a very theoretical idea and not something that actually occurs. So I'm happy to explain what that is. So there are three different kinds of abortion procedures. The first kind is called the abortion pill. It's actually two pills. And basically the first one kills the child in the womb, and then you take the second one, which basically flushes the child outside of you, usually at home or a toilet. And from what I've read, it actually, and what Planned Parenthood actually writes on their website, is basically ready for something that's kind of a blob to come out, and that's going to basically be the head. And you might see body parts, you might see finger, you might see things like that, because it has already been developing very rapidly, and it's not a comfortable procedure. It usually takes many hours at home. The second procedure is actually popular, and that's the suction procedure. It's a surgical abortion that you go in for, and that is where they use a suction catheter, which is 20 times more powerful than a household vacuum, to go inside the womb, find the baby, and basically send it out kind of limb by limb. And usually this procedure is done the most often. And then the third kind is called DNC, which is basically where they insert something like digoxin, a poison, to the baby's heart or brain in order to kill it. And usually it takes hours, sometimes with saline. They burn the child from the outside inward, and then the mother comes back the next day to make sure that it has actually died. And if it has, then they will proceed to use forceps to hopefully dismember the child. And I've asked them, how do you just determine what to yank out? And they say, we actually reach for whatever's closest. And then after they have done the dismemberment, they suction out the remainder of whatever is kind of left in the womb afterwards. So that is what abortion is. And it's actually a very horrible thing to talk about. I'm sorry, I know I'm probably making everyone very uncomfortable, but I usually tell people that it should make us uncomfortable, because this is not okay. And if it doesn't make us uncomfortable, then something is wrong.
Right. No, I mean, it literally makes me nauseous to talk about it. It's so horrendous. It's so horrendous from start to finish. But that's the thing. We've covered this topic in so many euphemisms. We've covered this topic in so many talking points. We've allowed the left to define the narrative so well on abortion that we don't think of what you just described when we think of abortion, and we need to, because that's the reality of it. It's brutal, it's murderous, it's horrible. And so I want to pivot immediately. I want people to keep in their minds what you just said. And I want to ask you the second question. Democrats claim that what you just described is protected in the United States Constitution, that we as individual states, as individual communities, as the people of the United States of America have no right to outlaw abortion or protect those innocent lives because the right to abortion is codified in the Constitution. Is that true or false?
That is definitely false. Abortion is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. So they actually had to kind of create something called a penumbra, this kind of emanation they claim from the Constitution, and they invented called right to privacy, which is also not in the Constitution. But they went off of this idea of unreasonable search and seizure, basically the idea that you should not have your home searched or your car searched without a warrant. And they somehow concluded that this means that you have the right to an abortion. Now, many constitutional scholars, many, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg, have written about the fact that this justification for Roe v. Wade really was not very strong. It did not make sense, and this was bad constitutional law. So, and I think the left actually knows that, which is why they've kind of had to pivot away from this idea that this is based on privacy. Also, Roe v. Wade touched on viability, which has moved earlier and earlier in the womb. So they've tried to move away from viability as an important point to then saying it's birth, maybe potentially after birth, when this human gets constitutional rights. But before that, it's nothing. They say it's an appendix, it's a body part. Obviously, none of that is true or makes any sense. But that is really where the left is on this issue. And I think that's why they know that Roe v. Wade is in jeopardy. They know that it's at risk and is likely going to be struck down. And it's really just a matter of time.
Yeah, and it ought to be. Even the law clerk for Justice Harry Blackmun, who was the Supreme Court justice who authored the ruling on Roe v. Wade, his law clerk, the law clerk says he's personally pro-abortion, but he says Roe v. Wade has no pretense of even being constitutional law. It's basically invented. It was judicial activism, legislating from the bench, as they called it. It ought to be overturned. And that's another myth, by the way, which you cover in your book. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, it doesn't automatically make abortion illegal anywhere, honestly. It just sends it back to the states where it belongs. And that's what ought to happen. So, like I said, I really think that this conversation is important because there's this huge push from the left to try to sweep in evangelical and even Catholic voters who ought to know better, ought to be pro-life, and convince them to vote for Democrats, but feel that their conscience has been assuaged because they claim that being pro-life, being holistically pro-life, doesn't necessarily have to include abortion. So I think we've thoroughly debunked that. Quickly, before we take questions, and thank you guys for sending all the questions. I see them popping in as we're talking. Keep sending them. We're going to get to them in a second. Tell people where they can find your book.
Yes, alrighty. So this is my book.
Yay! It looks great, by the way.
Of America. Yes, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible if you like listening, ebook if you like that, Kindle if you like that, all the different methods. And yeah, I think it's a great gift too, to give to friends, give to a family member, maybe donate to a library, to a community center so people can read about it who might not otherwise read about it. We are in kind of an information war right now, so I actually feel like hardcover things are very important because we are in a war. So yes.
And I like the idea, by the way, of donating it to a library or a community center, anywhere that provides, or even those, I don't know if where you live they have these, but where I live they have these little free libraries. They look like giant like hutches, like rabbit hutches on the corner of neighborhoods, and you can exchange books there. I think that's a really good idea because a lot of those places won't buy books that they disagree with ideologically. And so just providing that, you never know who might read it, whose mind you might change. Are you ready to get to questions?
I am ready. Fire away.
Let's look at some of these questions. Okay, first question. How do you intelligently respond? Oh, sorry, it scrolled. Guys, you're sending so many questions. I appreciate it. How do you intelligently respond to someone who says abortion is healthcare, and if you're pro-life, you are restricting healthcare? Danielle, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, it's the only healthcare procedure I've ever heard of that intentionally targets an innocent human life that itself is not in danger, itself is not in need. And I would say that if it's in need, then we should provide it with actual healthcare, which is life-saving, not killing. There is no healthcare procedure that requires, inserting someone's brain or heart with poison or dismembering them. That's not healthcare. That's wording that they like to use to make it seem like healthcare. And if we're talking about the life of the mother, there's never reason for that either. Delivery, yes, but killing the child in the womb, no. Either way, the child come out of the womb. So we're only talking about, are we delivering a dead child or an alive child?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it really comes down to the fact that there's no other medical procedure that actively kills a person. The purpose of medicine is to, prolong someone's life or save someone's life or improve someone's quality of life, not to end their life intentionally for the convenience of someone else. Like, very, very cut and dry, very black and white. Okay, this is a good question. This is exactly what we were talking about. One of my friends, this person says, is voting for Joe Biden this election, but has justified that and her conflicting opinion of being pro-life by saying that she is going to donate to pro-life organizations. Is that enough? Let me give an answer, and then I want to hear your thoughts on it, Danielle. I'm going to be very blunt here. I feel like a lot of people tiptoe around telling other people how to vote or what's the morally correct or incorrect way to vote. And they say, oh, I'll leave it to you. Let me be very blunt with you. No, that is not enough. It is not enough to simply, what you are doing is you are just stroking your own conscience because you know in your heart, listen to your intuition, you know in your heart that voting for Joe Biden is going to lead to more abortions, more babies dying. Joe Biden, like I said, supports abortion from the moment of conception to the moment of birth for any reason, no restrictions. Kamala Harris, the most liberal senator in the United States Senate, there is no one that is more pro-abortion than her. She's in bed with Planned Parenthood, whose goal is to commit as many abortions as possible to get as much profit as possible. You cannot vote for Joe Biden if you have any interest in protecting human life. And a donation to a pro-life pregnancy center, that's great. You should be doing that anyway, but that does not counterbalance your vote for Joe Biden. Danielle, am I wrong?
You are totally correct. And also, I would say that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's policies directly put in jeopardy those pro-life pregnancy centers that this person is claiming to want to donate to. So if you actually want to help them, this is not the way, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to make it so that pregnancy center has to advertise for abortions. They want to make it so that we're all paying for other people's abortions through federal funding. They want to force nuns to do that as well. People whose religion their conscience is against. So I would say that if you want to donate to a pro center, why would you hinder them by voting for Joe Biden and basically put roadblocks in their way and make it so that more and more funding is going to go to Planned Parenthood, more and more regulations are going to be put on these pregnancy centers. Many of them may even shut down, so there may not even be pregnancy centers for you to be donating. I mean, the left absolutely hates these organizations and does not want them getting any money or to continue operating, and they're already kind of operating off of a thread right now. So we need to have the law kind of, allow them to even just continue doing this. Forget even saying, Roe v. Wade is for sure going to be overturned. Of course, I hope it is, but vote for it does influence a lot of policy in terms of, how these organizations continue to go on.
Yep, I agree. 2 questions that I want to quickly answer. One, someone just typed, where do I submit the questions? Exactly where you submitted that comment, just in the comments section. Just put the question right in there. And then Danielle, somebody said they just got your book on Twitter or on Kindle. They said they just bought it on Kindle, so yay. Yeah, you're not going to regret buying that. You're going to get the answers to all these questions.
Keep this near in case they forget the title. Someone was like, what's the title? It's The Choice.
The Choice. You can also just look up her name if you forget the title. Okay, a couple more questions. Someone says, how do you respond when someone says that a baby in the womb is a parasite? Danielle?
Well, scientifically, they're not a parasite. We absolutely know that they're a human, but if we're talking about them in terms of being an inconvenience or something that you would say you just loathe and absolutely hate this being, I would say that, well, be glad that it is going off of you very soon. We have very limited pregnancy. Pregnancy is not a permanent state. It is not a life that is going to be attached to you forever. It has to come out of the womb. And so this is a 9-month period of this child being in the womb. And again, viability is earlier and earlier. Babies are born earlier. Twins are born earlier all the time. And I would say that if that is truly your attitude of viewing as, this is the worst parasite I've ever gotten, I would say that, adoption is a great option, because there are people out there who will love this child. There are about 35 families waiting to adopt a child. They will see this child as an absolute joy. So I would say, let someone raise this child who will truly cherish it.
Yep. A parasite, I mean, I think what you said in the beginning was exactly correct. Scientifically, it's not a parasite. This is a separate human being who is codependent on the mother, if you will. Okay, so first of all, people keep saying that you held up your book upside down. I don't think so, but I think
no, it's a circle, guys.
It's backwards because it's a selfie shot. So here's the title. Ready for this? Get ready so that you don't forget. The Choice: The Abortion Divide in America by Danielle D'Souza Gill. The Choice. 2 words. The Choice. Okay, a couple more questions. Let me see. Okay, this person says, it always seems that the subject of abortion is avoided in elections and debates, even though both sides have very strong opinions on it. Do you think the issue of abortion will come up in tonight's debates? Truthfully, do I think that? I don't think that the topic of abortion will come up in tonight's debate. I think people are very uncomfortable on both sides of the aisle talking about it, rightly so, as we discussed before. I don't think it should. I would, if I were a political candidate, I would talk about it much more. I think it's incumbent on us to be honest and blunt and compassionate and gentle, but talk about the facts of what abortion is. But I know I don't. I could be wrong, but we'll see in a couple hours.
Yeah, I thought they really hammered that at the RNC as well. They had a lot of
Yeah,
protesters, and I think that was great to just make it very clear, like, where we stand on this issue. And Vice President Pence talking about how, I'm pro-life and I don't apologize for it. And of course,
yeah,
Kamala and Joe then go to the, oh, well, we're people of faith, but Joe is Catholic, and so on, in order to defend their pro-abortion policy. So I'm glad they at least got that out there in the VP debate, even if they don't discuss it tonight.
definitely agreed. The RNC did a fabulous job with that, especially Abby Johnson. She just knocked it out of the park. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. How do you respond? So this is kind of playing off of what I said about it's incumbent on us to be open and honest and blunt, gentle and compassionate, even though it's an uncomfortable topic, and talk about it. But someone says, building on that, how do you respond to blowback that you might receive for being a pro-life woman? Two things. First of all, it doesn't matter what other people think when you're right. You can't base your opinions and your morals based on someone else's misunderstanding or someone else's lack of morals. You have to be okay with people disagreeing with you. You have to just accept that. You're never going to be able to convince everybody that you're right. You're never going to be able to convince everybody to agree with you. You have to be okay with that. Once you're okay with that, it just isn't as bothersome. You can let it roll off your back. The other thing, though, and this is really interesting, Danielle, is 50% of women in our country are pro-life. We see these women's marches. We hear feminists claiming that all women hate pro-life topics. That's not true. Half of us are pro-life, and even more than half of us think that second and third trimester abortion should be illegal. A majority of us think that. So you'd be surprised when you're open about it how many people are going to say, oh, yeah, I feel that way too.
Exactly. And I think too, the other side is always so much louder than us. So it might feel like, oh, everyone around me is this radical pro-choicer. But in reality, a lot of pro-lifers are just, a little bit more considerate and nice people. And so not going to be constantly, on you if you're pro-choice. I know that I wouldn't treat someone like that who's pro-choice that I know. So if someone is, being super rude to you who's pro-choice, I would just take it as, okay, well, you can present them with the facts, and if they're going to go towards personal insults and all of that, it's because they know that when it comes to the truth of the matter, they don't actually have any facts to go at it with you. But if someone wants to have a genuine discussion of the issue, then that's great.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say, and actually a priest friend of mine who works in this field, in biomedical and bioethical, research told me too. This was years ago, and I thought it was very insightful. It's always stuck with me. The reason that I always include with being honest, being blunt, being factual, being gentle and compassionate is because this is a very emotional topic. And Danielle, you probably agree with this. So does everyone who is watching. Most of us know someone who has had an abortion. Most of us know of someone who has had an abortion, whether it's a girlfriend, whether it's a family member, the men who are watching this, whether it's a woman in your life. Most of us know someone, and typically the stories are very sad. And so people's inclination is not to be judgmental, not to make that person feel bad. Or if it's you yourself who have experienced abortion, it's a very convicting thing to then change your mind and say, actually, abortion is wrong. It ends an innocent human life. That's a very difficult thing to do. You can do it. I encourage you to do it, especially if you're religious. I encourage you to ask forgiveness from God, and use your experience and what you've done as a platform to help other people. But one of the reasons that you'll get those emotional responses is because people are personally triggered. I hate to use that word, but they're personally triggered because either they have had an abortion or someone close to them has had an abortion. So keep that in mind when you're being compassionate and gentle and being honest, blunt, and factual.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true.
All right, guys, we have now been on for half an hour. I don't want to wear out our welcome here. There's so many questions that I didn't get to. I'll try to get to some in the comments section once I posted this on Instagram. If you liked this, let me know, and we'll continue to do more of these. Again, get to Danielle's book, The Choice. The title is The Choice, The Abortion Divide in America by Danielle D'Souza Gill. Danielle, thank you for being with me. It was really fun.
Liz, this was awesome. This was so fun, and I feel like there were so many good takeaways from this. So I don't even know what my favorite excerpt is. This was just a fun conversation.
Well, I guess we'll see, because whichever one you post online, that's the one you'll choose. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all the questions and the kind comments. And again, like 4 people asked me if I'm in my bathroom. It's my kitchen. It's my kitchen. It's just a lovely backsplash on the wall. Okay, that's it. Danielle, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Liz. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.